Let's get straight into the talking point now. This week, the Presidency receiving the second part of the report of the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector. The report dealing with Transnet and Denel. The third and final part is due at the end of this month. Thereafter, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, will submit the full report to Parliament along with his intentions regarding applying the recommendations made by the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. Now, to unpack all of this, we are joined now by the National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson, who also doubles up as the special advisor to the head of the NPA, Shamila Batoy, and that's Advocate Mthuzi Mhaga. Thank you very much for making the time to talk to us here in studio, Advocate Mhaga. Let me start off with the head of the ID, that's the Investigative Directorate, which is part of the NPA. She is serving her last month, as I understand it, now in February. Are there any plans to make an announcement as to who is going to replace her anytime soon?
Clearly, the transition plan has been unpacked by the National Director in consultation with the person who's heading it, that Advocate Omar Avachi, in terms of the transition, who will take over. But the process of finding a replacement is underway, but work is continuing with Advocate Granye as the head of the ID at the moment.
Is it possible that she will eventually exit without a name having been announced?
I don't want us to get into a speculative mode. I think it's important to allow that transition process to unpack.
All right, let's talk further about the ID. We're going to get into the details about how the NPA processes the work that has been done by the Zondo Commission. And the reason I'm giving specific focus to the Investigative Directorate, which is part and parcel of the NPA, is in part as a result of what I read in the Sunday Times this morning. It's an article written by your boss, Shamila Batoy, who is also talking about the possibility of the ID being made a permanent NPA entity. What's the big idea around this, and how soon can it be done?
Well, in terms of time frames, we can't commit to that because that's dependent solely on the head of state upon a submission that we have made. To say staff at the ID in terms of resourcing it, it's difficult because when it comes to security of tenure, in terms of people being retained in those positions, it's difficult because they are on contract, and people who get offers somewhere else, they decide to leave the ID and go and get permanent employment. At the moment, the ID is proclaimed as a temporal structure, and you can't fight crime. We can't fight corruption and complex commercial crimes in an entity that is temporal. That's why we're making a submission to say, let it be a permanent entity within the prosecuting authority, because only the NPA has the power to prosecute.
There is an ongoing discussion, Advocate Mhaga, around the establishment of a permanent anti-corruption agency. Now, the reason I'm asking this around the ID and the very issues that Shamila Batoy talks about in that article, which we've just shown on screen, is that the ID, is it likely to evolve into that permanent anti-corruption agency? Is that where we're going with this?
We believe that an effective anti-corruption agency needs to be permanent. And its permanent and location should be within the NPA because of the effectiveness that it would draw. Because you would have investigative capacity, you would have the prosecutorial capacity within that agency. And therefore, it would work as a well-oiled machine if you find all those, that model in one room.
Yeah.
So we are hoping that our pleas will not fall on deaf ears in that regard.
Before I go to a break, this is very interesting because I want to add to this discussion, Advocate Mhaga, what Batoy says are proposals to amend both the NPA Act along with the South African Police Service Act to enable the ID investigators to, and I quote here, exercise police powers. How far advanced are these talks?
These are submissions that we're making. And these submissions we're making, we're hoping that the powers that be will listen to them and engage us, and will see to it that at least there's that legislative amendment. It is a proposal that we're putting together in order to strengthen the effective fight against corruption and complex commercial crime.
And so I think it is clear, Advocate Mhaga, even though you're not saying it definitively, that the ID, in all probability, is going to evolve into this permanent anti-corruption agency. But of course, it will exist within the realm of
that is our hope, that is our proposal, that is our submission.
Okay, last point on this. Are we looking at the revival of the Scorpions outfit, albeit with a different name? I mean, you are looking to empower this entity with such powers as to even exercise police powers, as in effecting arrests. This is what we last saw with the Scorpions.
That's how effective the unit will be if it has those powers, if that legislative amendment is put through.
Might we see a name change, or will it remain the
It will remain the Investigative Directorate. That's our hope.
All right, let's take a break. When we return, we dive into the issues that have to do with the workflows. What happens when the Zondo Commission says, here we are done with report number 2. The NPA, these are recommendations on your part. How does the work flow from there? We'll continue in a moment. You're watching Politics Unscripted, the segment of the show, the talking point. And we are in conversation with Advocate Mthuzi Mhaga, who speaks for the National Prosecuting Authority. And we are discussing the second installment of the Zondo Commission. It has been handed over to the Presidency, and indeed, there are recommendations for prosecutions. Advocate Mhaga, procedurally, therefore, this is now the second report to have been received by the Presidency. Who receives it on the side of the NPA, specifically matters that are referred to you by the Zondo Commission, and how are they processed from there on?
They are supposed to be received by the Investigative Directorate, whose mandate is to investigate cases from the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. And that is the position. But let me correct you, Polly. The recommendations are for investigations,
yes,
with a view to instituting prosecution. And it should be understood in that context,
yeah,
which is why the NDPP Advocate Shamila Poto has made it clear that it's going to be business unusual. We are poised to move. But what is important is what she has done to establish a task force team which is coordinating the work from the Zondo Commission,
yeah,
on proclaimed cases, as well as cases that already sit with the National Prosecution Services, that is the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit, that are investigated by the Hawks.
Yeah.
But they're already, clearly, what is important here is that we've not been sleeping. Is work in progress.
Yeah.
Because we have about 40 cases, for example, that the ID is seized with. 15 of those cases are already enrolled. You'll recall that last week, the senior executive, Mr. Franz Tlakudi,
yes,
appeared in the regional court.
This is the person who was implicated in the
power
building
station,
of Kusile
power station.
Indeed, yes.
Facing fraud charges of amounting to 30 million.
Yes.
Now, you will recall also that we have been granted a preservation order that restrains assets to the value of 1.4 billion in respect of Kusile plant. You will recall also that the Nulane, Iqbal Sharma, and the Gupta's Iceland company case, where about 520 million has been seized by the Asset Forfeiture Unit. You'll recall that the Asset Forfeiture Unit also attached property or assets that belong to Edwin Sodi to the value of 300 million. Now, currently, the Asset Forfeiture Unit has also filed a provisional preservation order to the tune of 8 billion.
Yeah.
Now, that is an indication that there has been work in progress at the ID.
Okay.
I can even go as far as saying those that are peddling inaccuracies to say that there has not been prosecution, there's not been cases in court. You've got the Estina Dairy Farm case in court. You've got the asbestos case in court. So there's work in progress.
Yeah. Advocate Mhaga, you speak about 40 cases. Of that 40, 15 are enrolled.
Others are under investigation.
And we're talking specifically about cases stemming from the state capture inquiry.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. Then you touched on the task force.
Yes.
What is the role of the task force versus the role of the investigative directorate? Are they working together or do they work separately?
They work together. The task force is made up of the National Prosecuting Service, that is the SCCU. It's made up of the asset forfeiture unit, which comes in order to recoup the stolen money, bring back the stolen money. And then it's made up of the officials from the ID. To adopt a coordinated approach that audits all these cases, so that when you determine whether they are under investigations, they are ready for prosecution, so that when you then move in with the prosecution, you have a coordinated and well-oiled machinery that's able to push these cases through and prioritize them. What is important, Paul, is the fact that the Zondo Commission did not conduct criminal investigations. So some of these cases require criminal investigations by the ID and the Hawks, those that sit with the SCCU. So the process, that's why the process is taking longer. Some people are expecting that from the Zondo Commission report, we should be arresting people. It's not going to work like that.
Yeah.
As the NDPP indicates in the
Although
article.
there is, Advocate Mhaga, a concern that the ID, whose focus is on these complicated cases of corruption that are stemming from the Zondo Commission, and not just the Zondo Commission, they also focus their work around other commercial crimes that are regarded as a bit complex.
Yes.
There is, though, the concern that that unit is severely undercapacitated. Can I ask you the question about the level of experience from a very junior investigator or prosecutor to the most senior? What is the level of experience?
These are experienced prosecutors, in the sense that we don't take them straight from varsity into the ID. You get them from various units within the NPA. So these are from the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit, for example, DEX Unit, Asset Forfeiture Unit. Those are experienced prosecutors, and they're very meticulous in doing their work.
Okay. The reason I ask these questions, Advocate Mhaga, is that the concern here is most of the cases that we have seen, there are those who make the argument that there is a severe lack of skill, in particular in dealing with complex financial crimes, and they go as far as to say forensic accounting is probably the best skill that the NPA could use right now, because you are dealing with complex financial crimes. However, that skill may be lacking. How severely constrained are you in that regard?
We are not that constrained, because the forensic capacity, for example, from the Zondo Commission, we're in discussions with the Department of Justice to have it migrated into the ID at the moment, and which is going to help the ID, because that's additional resources. But there are financial investigators that are sitting with the ID that help in those cases that have been enrolled already.
Okay. Then there are those. I mean, you spoke about how the reports coming from the Zondo Commission may not be court ready and they still need further investigation. But there is another suggestion, though, to say the curious question here is that these are recommendations and findings that come from a process that has been headed by the most senior judge in the country, and therefore what the case or the point that they are trying to make here is that these are cases that are of a prima facie nature, and therefore there is a clear interest to prosecute. My question to you is, are you building on these cases in order to prosecute? Because there is a difference between deciding whether to prosecute and building on a case that comes and the evidence says there's a prima facie case here. You need to basically add to it.
I'm not sure if there is a reference to prima facie. Because when there's reference to prima facie, it means you must take it to court. Prima facie means at face value, there is a prosecutable case, and therefore you should prosecute.
Yeah.
But of importance is the fact that I can make reference, for example, to the SIU report cases, which come from the SIU, but the standard of proof for those cases is different to the standard of proof in criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
Because the standard of proof in criminal prosecution is proof beyond reasonable doubt. But in a commission of inquiry and SIU, it's a balance of probabilities. Yeah. And then they make findings and they make recommendations that you pursue investigations with a view to prosecute. That's why even in all the recommendations, I've gone through the second report, yeah, you will find that nowhere does it say this matter should be referred for prosecution. They say referred for investigation with a view to prosecute. Yeah. Now, NPP has made it clear that we will follow the evidence. We will take only those cases to court where there is evidential material that will sustain the charges that will be preferred against the accused. There will be those cases that we will feel there's insufficient evidence to prosecute, and therefore will decline to prosecute in those cases. That's why we urge people to be patient with us, because we're going to be very meticulous in our assessment and evaluation of the cases that are brought to us and of the cases that we bring to court for prosecution.
You touch on the SIU.
Yes.
That matter, I think, was before Parliament this week, where there is a complaint, yes, that there is a negligible number of these cases that are being seen through the prosecutorial process. How do you respond there?
I will say people should understand that when it comes to SIU referrals, they are referred to the NPA, but the wrong interpretation of that referral is to say for prosecution when those matters are not prosecution or trial ready. Because SIU does not conduct criminal investigation, but conduct investigation in order to recover and to cancel unlawful conduct and to recover state funds that have been looted, yeah, and contracts that have been unlawfully awarded. Now, there's the second leg to it, which is investigation.
Yeah.
After that, it comes to the NPA. So upon receipt of those cases, we assess them, we send them straight to law enforcement to conduct investigations so that we can make a determination of whether those cases are ready to be prosecuted or not. And depending on evidential material that comes from law enforcement, we then decide to prosecute. I will make an example. For example, there's a fusion center which coordinates all cases, which is made up of SIC, SARS, the NPA, the DPCI, and SIU. That fusion center has about 45 cases that are with the fusion center that have been enrolled. Out of those cases, about 15 of them are referrals from SIU, yeah, which means these are cases that are in court, enrolled.
Okay. There is a view from at least one law expert, Jean Redpath, who says the NPA could unburden itself by taking those very cases that are referred to it by organizations or units such as the SIU to say, take these cases back, and all you need to do is simply add legal capacity, and this can actually be fought by the SIU itself without necessarily forwarding the work to the NPA, because as things are already, you are under severe pressure with volumes and volumes of cases coming your way.
We have not complained about the volume of work we get. Secondly, the National Prosecuting Authority is the only prosecuting authority organization in terms of the Constitution that's empowered to prosecute.
But you can delegate those prosecutorial powers.
To who?
according to Jean Redpath, this has been done, it was done in 2018.
No, we can't delegate prosecutorial powers to any other institution other than the NPA in terms of the Constitution. We have not complained about capacity to prosecute those cases. We are saying...
But do you agree that the law allows you to do that?
To delegate?
Yes.
No, it doesn't. What is important, Xoli, is the fact that those cases, we can only take them to court when they are prosecution ready, have been investigated by the DPCI, brought to us as evidential material that is ready to be enrolled, and there's evidence that will sustain the charges that we prefer against those that are implicated.
Yeah.
There will be those that when we determine and assess and evaluate the evidence that is brought by law enforcement, we are not convinced that they should be brought to court, and we will definitely decline in those cases, as we do in some cases.
All right. So we're going to take a pause there for a moment, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the low-hanging fruits. These are cases that have been said to really be quick to get through the prosecutorial process, and you get convictions. Why is the NPA not tackling these with the necessary speed? We'll pick up on that. Politics Unscripted, the segment of the show, the talking point. Advocate Mthuzi Mhaga is the spokesperson for the National Prosecuting Authority. Let's pick up on that point I made before we went on a break, Advocate Mhaga, and that is to say there are cases that are of a high-profile nature, but could get through the process quickly, and you get your convictions, and in the process you give confidence to the public that work is being done. As you said here earlier, you're not resting on your laurels. Why am I saying this? There is a view that as the only national prosecuting authority in the country, you are not only failing yourselves with the little confidence that you had started to regain by not going after these easy cases, but you also are diminishing the respect for the rule of law. Before I give you a specific case, how do you respond on that element?
You see, Xoli, the difficulty with media is that you find interest in cases that have certain high-profile personalities. I'll make an example. The national director is impressed on prosecutors. Every meeting that she has with the prosecutors, let's go for the quick wins. Let's go for the low-hanging fruits. What are those?
Yeah.
Contravention of the Public Finance Management Act. Contravention of the Municipal Finance Management Act. Those contraventions are easy cases to deal with. As a result, if you look at the fusion center cases, we have about 16 convictions. If you look at the Northwest Section 100 administration cases,
yeah,
we've got about 5 convictions there. Those were supply chain management managers.
Yeah.
You know, your CFO. Just on the contravention of the Public Finance Management Act.
16 convictions.
16 convictions on the PPEs.
Yeah.
In the fusion center. Now, that's an indication that we are applying that approach, but it's not gaining the momentum that the media would like to gain.
Maybe you're not communicating as you should, and I'll make a case about why I am of the view that high-profile cases that are going to be quickly to convict and get a result, that is going to gain you lots more credibility in the public space. I agree with you that if there are 16 cases that have been already finalized, it means that this information is not getting to us as it should.
I'll take that criticism.
That's fine. So let's talk about, for example, Dudumien. A case in point is that she decides to reveal the identity of a protected witness at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. The chair says a charge is going to be laid against you.
Yeah.
Who is dealing with that? We don't know. Is it in front of the NPA? We don't know. The reason
I'll tell you.
Dudumieni is important, Mr. Mhaga, is as a result of this. So far, by the way, this will be contempt of court on her part. That would be the charge for what she did, contempt of court. In this country right now, South Africans in general have been sensitized to just how important and lethal this charge is of contempt of court. Why? Because you have a former president who has landed up in jail. More recently, you have the head of news at the SABC who sadly has lost her job as a result of a contempt of court charge. So these things are memorable in people, and therefore the next person who decides to defy a court, they will know what's coming for them.
You see, Toli, the case of Mr. Dumieni is falls within the purview of the NPS. The NPA is still guiding that investigation, and it's at an advanced stage, and a decision will be made soon on whether to prosecute or not. So that
You're still deciding not to prosecute,
yes.
whether
Remember,
to prosecute or not.
Toli, you can't just remember these were proceedings during the State Capture Commission. And therefore, you need to be very meticulous in your consideration of evidence that comes before you.
What more evidence do you need? She deliberately did it. We all watched it.
I am not going to be ventilating an evidential material before in the media, for example. It suffices for me to say investigations are at an advanced stage and a decision will be made soon. But we'll be meticulous in how we decide to prosecute that case and in how we prosecute it when that decision is made and if that decision is made.
On the score of perhaps communicating more on the work that you are doing in order to enhance your credibility.
We do issue these media statements. We do go to court and issue media advisories. Come with us when you do these cases, but you guys choose to go to other cases that I will not mention.
Fair point. The law experts, they also hold the view that if you are indeed to make headway, there are type of cases that they call the plea and sentence agreement cases.
105A.
Indeed, because these are very quick to finalize. Are there such cases that you think fit this kind of profile, particularly the ones stemming from the State Capture Commission?
We are still in the process of auditing those cases and actually review and see if there are such cases where you can enter into a plea and sentence agreement. Remember, a plea and sentence agreement is a mutual agreement between the parties. It can either be initiated by the accused or it can be initiated by the prosecution itself.
Yeah.
When we come across such cases, we will definitely take that decision and you'll see those cases coming through our courts.
Are there any such cases that you...
The process of auditing and evaluating and assessing the current cases is underway, so I'm unable to say there is a possibility of a plea and sentence agreement in a particular case because that process is still underway.
Yeah. Let me ask this overall question around the handling of the cases stemming from the State Capture Commission. I don't think we've dealt with it since we started this interview. Does the NPA have a plan, a comprehensive plan to deal with the volume of cases that are going to be stemming from the State Capture Commission? You already spoke about 40. And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this. And that is that the acting Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, is of the view, after his assessment, that the NPA simply is not up to the task in terms of capacity. He says you're incapable.
I started by demonstrating to you our capacity to deal with these cases, regardless of the volume or nature of the cases when they come through. And I said currently we've got 15 cases on the roll. I've taken you through the asset forfeiture cases.
Yeah, but it's 15 cases out of 40.
Yes, others are under investigations. Remember what I told you, that the commission itself did not conduct criminal investigations, and therefore those cases require criminal investigations by ID and in respect of those that are sitting with SCCU by the Hawks.
Yeah.
So when we get criticized that we don't have the capacity to deal with these cases, I take that to be very, very disingenuous, in the sense that we have demonstrated to you the cases that we've enrolled. We've demonstrated to you the cases in respect of which assets has been recovered and seized, and the courts confirmed these forfeiture orders. So it can't be that we are unable to deal with these cases. We are able to deal with cases, so much as we are able to deal with the SIU referral cases, so much as we are able to deal with the PPE cases where we have 16 convictions, but no one is talking about it. We issue media statement to that effect, but they don't get profiled. However, we are working tirelessly to ensure that impunity is not a given.
If we are to look at the broader picture around what the NPA needs right now in terms of manpower and money.
We need more power, more money.
You need both manpower and
more
money.
money.
How much money?
I don't have those details right now in terms of budgetary constraints and all that, but we need more money to fire from all cylinders.
Let's talk about cleaning out of the institution, particularly reading the institution of so-called rogues within the NPA. How much work has been done in that regard?
Work is underway, Xoli, in the sense that there is a realization that the NPA did not escape the tentacles of state capture, as revealed in the commission, as revealed even in the media and elsewhere. We are conducting investigations internally. Those investigations are at an advanced stage, and decisions are going to be made soon in respect of certain individuals who are facing those allegations. One of them resigned in the wake of a recommendation to the president to institute a commission of inquiry in respect of, but I won't mention the name. So what is important is the fact that there's work underway to ensure that the NPA does not become a victim of state capture again, because there has been that realization, and it's being dealt with in that fashion.
The NPA head, Shamila Batoy, in that article that's on the Sunday Times today, she speaks about the safeguards to future-proof the NPA from capture. But before we get there, how many such individuals would you say still reside within the NPA that should have gone by now?
Without mentioning the names, which I'm not at liberty to, I think we have about 5 or 6 people that are under investigations, yes.
And these are serious charges against them?
Of course, we wouldn't conduct investigations and be about to make decisions if we don't consider same to be serious.
Let's talk about those safeguards.
The safeguards are around independence of the NPA. We've made a submission to the Zondo Commission where we're talking about the appointment of National Director, the appointment of DPPs, Directors of Public Prosecutions, whose jurisdiction, where they make all the decisions, the appointments of Deputy Directors of Public Prosecutions, the fact that the accounting officer for the National Prosecuting Authority is the DG, not sitting within the National Prosecuting Authority, relying on delegations to do powers. We're saying we are hampered in terms of being productive enough because we're not independent fully from the executive. And therefore, we are making a submission of legislative change in the National Prosecuting Authority Act.
Yeah. Accepting help from outside, it's a point that I should have made part of the question around resource constraints. The CEO, for example, of Business Leadership South Africa has been on the airwaves everywhere, calling on the NPA to say, we're giving you a blank check. How much do you need in order to assist the work of making sure that corruption is gotten rid of in the country?
Currently, we are in discussion with the Department of Justice, because we fall under the Department of Justice, to establish a donor funding mechanism, but which will have a donor oversight committee to ensure that the monies that come through to support NPA in the fight against corruptions are properly managed. We welcome assistance from business, but we need to be very careful of what used to be called the state capture of the NPA.
Yeah.
That's why we need to put safeguards like the donor oversight committee to ensure that the monies that come through are clearly audited, and we vet whoever submit or make those donations, and that is managed through the treasury. So what is important is the fact that we welcome the assistance. We're engaging with the Department of Justice to see how properly managed that process can be.
Okay, so aside from monies that you would accept from outside, what about skills of people who potentially would not have been part of the NPA architecture? These are lawyers, highly skilled perhaps, who are going to assist with the work that you need to do right now, and that is to prosecute these complicated financial crimes.
Look, we are engaging with various law firms, and I've been mandated by the NDPP to set up a meeting with them now to see how best they can assist the institution in that regard.
Yeah. All right. Let's pause there for a moment, and when we return, we conclude the conversation with a very sad chapter, and that is the issue of the protection of whistleblowers. Shamila Batoy talks about that in her article today. We're going to engage on that in a moment. This is the Talking Point. We are in conversation with the NPA spokesperson, Adv Mthuzi Mhaga. As we wrap up the conversation, Adv Mhaga, the sad story of whistleblowers. One person was shot and killed, and they were said to be a whistleblower participating in an SIU process. The other person sits outside of the country right now. That's Ethel Williams. And there just doesn't seem to be any progress, or at least speedily, to try and protect these people who are doing good for our country, as acknowledged by your principal in her article today. Let's talk first about the different categories of whistleblowers. You, as the NPA, have an office called the Office of Witness Protection. Am I right?
There is a Witness Protection Unit.
Yes.
That sits within the National Prosecuting Authority for effective protection of witnesses that are with state witnesses in prosecutions that are underway or even prosecutions that are pending. But by establishment of the Witness Protection Act, they are supposed to be sitting within the Department of Justice. But by arrangement of the previous NDPP and the previous Minister, Amaduna, they had to be an arrangement that they'll be located within the National Prosecuting Authority. But to come to the situation of whistleblowers, any threat to a witness hampers the prosecution in the long run and compromises that prosecution, because you'll have a reluctant witness unless there are safeguards or protection provided to that witness.
Yeah.
Currently, I had a chat with the head of the Witness Protection who was saying now they are going to accommodate whistleblowers who are potential witnesses in the Witness Protection Unit.
Yeah.
Which means they will go through the program and they will be protected and relocated. And for your information, the Witness Protection Unit has zero record of people that die or that get attacked whilst under witness protection in South Africa. That's how efficient and effective the Witness Protection Service is within the National Prosecuting Authority. That's why it's good news that the whistleblowers who are potential witnesses will be accommodated there. But then there's a process that is under consideration, which is the legislative amendment of the Witness Protection Act, to ensure that even those whistleblowers who are not potential witnesses are accommodated within the Witness Protection Unit. But obviously there will be budgetary issues, which means we'll need more money to accommodate those people.
The record, the zero record of fatalities when it comes to the witness protection, is that as a result of how effective this witness protection program is, or is it as a result of people being reluctant to go into it? Because I'm sure you have heard that there are those who have rejected to be part of this witness protection
Yes,
program.
there are those that have rejected, but the reason why we have zero record of fatalities is because of the effective nature and efficiency of the program itself. There are a lot of people that are there. It's just that I don't have a statistical account of how many witnesses we have in our program. But the fact that there's no attack, there's no fatalities, it's an indication of how effective the unit is while it's located within the National Prosecuting Authority.
Those whistleblowers who may not necessarily be witnesses, but still need protection, are you able to assist in that regard? Would you be able to assist in that regard?
I've indicated that we are looking into amending the Witness Protection Act to accommodate those with whistleblowers, so that every person who's a whistleblower who brings in credible evidence, admissible evidence to court, we're able to protect that individual. Because remember, it's important for our prosecution to have witnesses that are not reluctant to testify in court proceedings.
Then, Mr. Mhaga, there is the other issue around what I would call, I'm struggling with the word for it, but it has to do with what the State Capture Commission chairperson spoke about, which is that whistleblowers who came with information, and of course, depending on the credibility of that information, there should be some kind of a reward system. Is that something that is in the purview of the NPA, or would those be justice, the Department of Justice matters?
That wouldn't sit with the NPA in rewarding people for being witnesses, but when people are relocated and they lose their job, they get a stipend from the Witness Protection Service.
Yeah, because how I think the Commission chairperson sort of located this conversation was around, if there are monies that have been recovered as a result of crimes that have been perpetrated, a portion of those monies that have been recovered would go towards a person who would have assisted in making
what
sure
you're
that
talking
those
about,
monies are recovered.
Koli, it's criminal asset recovery account,
Right,
which sits with the Department of Justice. And we're making an argument or making a point that that money could be used to fund the protection of whistleblowers.
I see. And where is that process now?
That is a proposal that we're putting together.
Yeah.
Yes.
The President will be delivering his State of the Nation address in the coming week. Any special requests you have made as the prosecuting authority, particularly towards the issue of either resource constraints or any other important matter?
You want me to lose my job? I cannot reveal in the media what we submitted to the President for consideration in his speech.
Yeah.
Wait until Thursday and see if we have something from the NPA.
All right, as we finalize our talk, in fact, it's a last question from my side. The NPA has suffered huge reputational damage over the last decade. When you make an assessment as to the work that has been done to clean up the institution and make it believable again, how far would you say you've traveled?
We've traversed a long road. NDPP has been there for about 3 years now, rebuilding the institution, boosting investor confidence, ensuring that people live in safety. Those are what drives us. For example, that's those are strategic objectives for the next 5 years. We are building an institution of integrity, of independence, of professionalism, of credibility and accountability. We've got those IPEC values that we live.
Yeah.
And we think we are in the process of cleaning up the institution with those investigations that are in an advanced stage in respect of the individuals that are implicated in state of capture. And a decision will be made soon. So we are en route to ensuring that the institution's image is restored, feared by the criminals, admired by the peers,
and for you
loved by the people.
And part of how you're going to achieve that is by doing exactly what you and I are doing
And
today, communicating and ensuring that the work that you do is publicized, because half the time you tell us that, no, you're going to jeopardize the cases that you are fighting in court.
NDPP,
if you speak on
NDPP always says, let actions speak louder than words. It doesn't help for us to come to Newzroom Afrika and say, we plan to prosecute in the near future about 3 or 5 people. She prefers that you see those people in orange overalls. She prefers that you see us recovering the stolen money.
Advocate Mthunzi Mhaga, thank you very much for making the time to come talk to us.
You're welcome.
Truly appreciate it. That's